Hey everyone, my name is David Snead, and I'm a missionary in Lviv, Ukraine. And right now we are talking to Terry English, who is a missionary over in the Czech Republic. How you doing, Terry?
I'm good, thank you. The
It's
sun
good
is
to hear.
shining, so it's a good day.
Yeah, sweet. It's also pretty sunny out here right now. So, has the weather been good?
Actually, it's been the perfect weather for quarantine. So, in the Czech Republic, we're allowed to go for walks in nature. So most afternoons, either my wife or myself have been taking our kids on bike rides.
Okay. Okay,
Couldn't
very
imagine doing this
cool.
in the rain.
Yeah, we are blessed to have a dog. There's a law here that you can't go to a park without a dog. And so we have a dog, and so I go to the park all the time. Still have to wear the mask and everything, but yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then also how people can contact you online if they want to.
Yep. So I work for an organization called Josiah Venture. We are a pro-church missions organization. Basically, our mission is to equip young leaders to fulfill the Great Commission through the local church. So everything we do is with, for, and through the local church, and our role is to equip the churches to reach out to young people. So most people make a profession of faith before the age of 21. So we think that young people are very, very strategic. I'm going to say market, a group of people to work with. Sorry, a very strategic group of people to work with. And
Nice.
what we do is basically seek to walk alongside churches and help them do a good job in their own youth ministries.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that follows almost all of the anecdotal evidence I can think of, where most of my friends made a profession of faith at least before 25, if not 21, if not 14, or etc. So, yeah. How Terry and I know each other. I met him at a JV conference over in the Czech Republic a couple of years ago. I'm not sure exactly which year that was, but there's a JV missionary. We call it Epocha here in Ukraine, that serves in our church. So they're a blessing to us, and that ministry has been a blessing to us. So thank you guys for what you guys do.
It's a pleasure to do it.
Yeah, yeah. So let's see. One of the reasons why I wanted to have you on was because you guys helped us set up our online like streaming of
Mm-hmm.
services and everything. Well, your advice, and then also you did a webinar thing, right? So I wanted to get your uh expertise on that, and then also just kind of see how that went for you, like how that all happened that you were the guy to go to. So can you tell
Yep.
us about that?
So, how did that happen? I'll answer that question first. 5.5 weeks, 6 weeks ago now, on a Tuesday afternoon, our Czech government made a law forbidding gatherings from over 100 people. So no gatherings of over 100 people. And as an elder board, we were very blessed to realize that applied to us. Obviously, it wasn't good because it meant that we couldn't have our church services. But we're a relatively new church. We planted only 3 years ago. And to realize that we're now regularly reaching over 100 people on our Sunday services was a
Wow,
blessing.
three
So
years
that
and you
was,
guys are already that big.
yeah. So
That's amazing.
we already were discussing how to respond to that, and several of us were already using Zoom as a conference call tool. So the suggestion that we had, the way our church operates, we have big church every other week, and every other week we meet in house churches. Some people call those home groups. We call them house churches. And so our first initial simple response was to say, well, why don't we have people meet in their house churches? And then we'll have one of those house churches running the church service and just Zoom it into everybody else's meeting or something like that.
Cool, that's awesome.
So that was our initial reaction. We could easily do that. We have lots of musicians, especially in the house church that I'm a part of. So the initial reaction was to say, okay, we can go on as usual. We'll just be using our home as the church instead of our building. And then everybody else can be watching the church service from there with their house churches in their community groups. That plan had to change very fast because we found out the day before that one of our members has coronavirus.
Wow.
An interesting coincidence is that one of our elders runs the government lab, which runs the tests for this part of the country. And his very first positive test was a member of our church.
Oh, wow.
So we found out literally like the day before, as a church, we could no longer have any of our members meeting with each other, because during that week, several of us had been meeting, and the chances of more people having been infected was very, very high.
Mm-hmm.
So as a church, we had to make the decision immediately that whatever our response is, it's got to be that people can experience church from their homes.
Mm-hmm.
And that basically forced us to explore how can you create a church service which feels interactive, because we are a very interactive informal church, that keeps people engaged. We don't want people to become consumers. We want them to be active participants.
Yeah.
While at the same time, the program being quality enough, or delivery system being good enough that people will look forward to doing something like this. So again, because some of us had experience of using Zoom and webinars and things like that, we realized that the Zoom webinar program would enable us to do that. Now, several other churches, they went down the road of videoing a service from their building.
Yeah.
That week, that was still allowed. We chose that. We knew that we couldn't do that because we already had the virus amongst us. But several other churches, they went down the road of, okay, we'll have our worship team come in, we'll have our teaching pastor come in. You know, we'll video a church service.
Yeah.
We weren't able to do that from the get-go, but we didn't want to do that either, because for us, we really wanted it to feel like we're in this together. It's not a small group of people are creating something and the rest of you will sit at home and watch it. We wanted people to feel like this is an interactive experience. We're a part of this church. So that forced us to go down that road. And the first week we tried it, it went remarkably well. We added other things like Mentimeter. So ways of having everybody interact. So there were two things that we said from the very, very first church service. Please, if you're watching this, send a photograph and put it onto our church's Facebook wall so that we can all experience, each other watching this together. And we also use Mentimeter during the church service. So
what is that? I'm not sure if I can't hear you correctly or if I just don't know the service.
Yeah, Mentimeter. So it's a web portal which allows you to ask questions, and people then log into the portal with a code which sends them to the page that you set up with a question, and then you can decide how do you see people's answers. So, for example, the answers might just come up as bubbles, or it might create a word cloud. But it's just a way that you can get immediate feedback from people. And so we actually use this in every church service. It could be a question at the beginning of the sermon. It could be how are you going to respond to this sermon in the coming week? There's different ways you can use it, but we really wanted there to be a way for everyone to feel like I can participate in this church service.
Can you send me a link to that? I want to link that in the description of this video. So
sure.
I'll ask you after we're done here, but yeah.
What I could also do is put one up right now and share the screen so that you'd actually see it.
Cool, yeah,
would you like that?
Awesome.
Okay,
yes,
so
please.
What I'll do now is I'll put one of our old ones from this week because we haven't deleted them yet.
Okay.
I just have to log into Mentimeter right now. In fact, here's what I'll do. I'll share the screen right now, and you can see how you even set this up.
Okay. Do I have Zoom set up so that you can share your screen? I'm not sure.
I'm fairly sure I can share. I'm just not. That's interesting. Oh, yeah. Here we go. There we go. So, do you see that right now?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So when you go into mentimeter.com, I'm already logged in. I have an account already. So you can go to previous mentees questions. So this is something that we had last week. And the question was, what do you think about if you hear the word holy? So we were starting a sermon series on Philippians. And so this came up. And if I was to present this now, I'm going to hit present. This is basically what people see when they go to menti.com. So your audience goes to menti.com and you tell them what code to go to. They see this. And then as they start answering the questions, you see the answers come up.
Very cool.
So it's
This is
very simple,
awesome.
and you can also have different ways of answering the questions. So on this second one, we chose to have the questions answered this way.
Uh-huh.
So there's several different ways you can do it. It's a really, really great way to create an interactive classroom. And
Yeah.
I first started using this during training events. It's just a simple way to get immediate feedback from your audience. So
Okay.
I'll stop sharing the screen now.
Very cool. If just for anybody who's watching, I'm going to have that in the description below. So get you guys set up on that. Praise the Lord. That's a great tool, man.
Yeah, it helps to keep people engaged. So.
Yeah, that's one of the big struggles, I think, that's been for a lot of people, especially for our church, at least, like Facebook comments. We go Zoom to Facebook Live, and so Facebook comments gives a little bit of interaction where you can see them and then respond to prayer requests and that kind of thing. But they're also pretty buggy. Like, you don't always see them, immediately, or sometimes they don't even appear at all if you're the one streaming. So.
Yeah, and the other problem that we found with live streaming is we have afternoon services, and our service starts at the time when a lot of American churches start. And so a couple of times we've actually not been able to live stream our service because for some reason either Zoom or YouTube or Facebook has not had the bandwidth available to us. So that's another decision that we made, is that our interactiveness cannot be dependent on a live stream. So we've got around that in two ways. So one is using Menti, but what we also do is we give people the Zoom address so they can watch our church services either on Zoom or on YouTube. It's up to them. But the actual Zoom address is always going to be the safer option. We think we've gotten around the live stream problem now, but a couple of weeks that has been a problem for us.
Okay, so have you heard of Zoom bombing? Do you know what that is?
Yep.
Have you guys had any problems with that, or do you guys take precautions against that?
No, well, when we are doing a webinar, it's not a problem because you can't Zoom bomb a webinar. You can Zoom bomb a meeting. So this meeting could be, if it's not password protected, this can be Zoom bombed. Although Zoom this week are coming up with a new version, which they think that the encryption will prevent that from happening. So I do know of Zoom bombing. It has happened to friends of mine in the past. And the other forum that we have used in the church is Zoom meetings. So the first week when we had to close everything down, we created a meeting that we call Better Together. And at 6 o'clock every evening, we just opened up a meeting room that all of our church knew the address, and whoever turned up, turned up. There was one of the elders or one volunteer was responsible for guiding the conversation and starting off with some kind of a short devotion and prayer, making sure we're asking people, hey, how are you doing? Is there anything we can pray for? But it really was just set up to be a touch point for members of our church that were suddenly on their own. And so for the first couple of weeks, that was a really impactful and effective tool that we also had. But last week, we chose to close down the daily meetings because we were finding that people weren't needing us anymore. At that point, our home churches have began to use Zoom. And so we have other touch points that we have created now. It took a few weeks for our house churches to get up and running as Zoom meetings. So now we only do 2 Zoom meetings a week. One is for our children. So on Friday evenings, our kids have their own children's hour, which they love. And that's, it's quite crazy. The girl who runs that is just a very talented worker with young people. And during that 1 hour, my kids are running all over the house, fulfilling different challenges they have.
That's awesome. That is wonderful.
Yeah, they're enjoying it. And then on Saturday evenings, we opened up a men's half hour and a women's hour, just so that people could have that, time with just men, or the ladies can have time together just to pray together and ask each other if they have any needs and things like that.
So I mean, I don't want to be too stereotypical, but at least what my wife tells me as well is that it seems to be very natural for the women of our church, at least, to have these conversations, to fellowship together more easily. What do you guys do for the men? Because that's been sometimes kind of a
It's really
struggle.
hard.
Yeah.
It's a struggle. With men, you have to have one or two people leading the conversation.
Mm.
So Czech men, we say you have to have 3 beers inside of you before you open up. And that's another
Just
reason
for
why
any
we
of
only
my
give.
American friends that are watching, European culture is different.
It
That
is different.
3 beers does not mean drunk here.
No.
Okay, that might mean drunk in America. That does not mean drunk here. That means you're a little loosened up. Okay, so
I was
yes,
just talking about Czech culture as a whole, not the church culture, but but
yes,
it illustrates the point. It illustrates the point.
yes, yes, yes.
And so, I mean, we've only set aside half an hour for that meeting, and it needs to be led by someone who's actually doing the leading, and they are
Mm-hmm.
specifically saying, okay, how are you, Vasek? How are you this week? And it's not nearly as well attended as the
Mm-hmm.
ladies' meeting either. So
Yeah.
I think as a medium, I think we find Zoom more difficult to contend with. So we provide it for those that would like to use it, but not everyone uses it, of course.
For men, one thing that, as we were talking right before I started recording, one thing that I found that works better, at least for me, is it also goes with my personality. I'm more of a one-on-one type person. I don't really like
Mm-hmm.
big groups and that kind of thing. I can deal with it, but it's not something I want to do every day. So what seems to work for me and the other men in our church is that one-on-one phone call. You know, you
Yeah.
just literally you pick up the phone and you dial a number. You know, something
Mm-hmm.
we've forgotten how to do sometimes, but you know.
Yeah, and that's as we track what's happening with youth work around Europe right now.
That
A
was my
lot of
next
youth
question.
ministries they jumped to Zoom, and a lot of young people were happy that they could continue meeting on Zoom. But what we're finding 4 weeks in now is I think young people are finding a hard time maintaining those relationships over social media.
Mm-hmm.
And actually they're quite tired of using Zoom. So what we're finding now and what we're telling youth workers is just the phone. Like what used to work in the olden days is still what works best today. What you can't do is just turn your big youth group meeting over to a mass Zoom meeting. It's great that, you know, if you have 25 or 30 kids turning up, that's amazing. But unless you're breaking up into the small meeting rooms, unless you're somehow giving a chance for those teenagers to have one-on-one conversations with each other and one-on-one conversations with the leaders, you're not meeting the need that those young people have.
Amen.
So the big meeting events, they're still good to do. It's a great way just to stay engaged and maybe, you know, have some fun and maybe do a Bible study over Zoom. But you must be providing one-on-one personal contacts for your young people. And,
Mm-hmm.
and a Zoom meeting isn't that.
Yeah. Are you? I don't remember. You're also part of Fusion, right?
Yeah, so Fusion, the choir ministry in local churches, I was one of the people that helped launch that.
Mm-hmm. So before I ask my question, why don't you give us a little bit of a spiel, like a 20-second spiel of you know, explain what it is. So.
Yeah, so as an organization, we look for ways that we can help churches reach out to unchurched young people. And we think that there's several highways which are very impactful in young people's lives. So obviously sport is a big thing. Music is very big for young people. Schools is where young people are. We also have things like camps. We have a strong camp culture here in Central and Eastern Europe. Social media, obviously, is another one of those. And so with each of those highways, we look for a tool that we can use that we can equip the church to use. And so Fusion is one of those. So what we basically do is we teach churches to start rock pop choirs. So the choirs don't sing praise and worship, they sing contemporary music. Obviously, there's some music that we cannot possibly do because of the content. But basically, we teach these churches to set up choirs of contemporary music. We help them to set up something like music schools as well. They teach young people how to play the drums, the keyboards, guitar, and things like that. And the young people who join the choir, they are the mission field. The choirs have a lot of energy. Sometimes
Yes, they do. They do.
The concerts can be really quite wild. And so we invite even people in the audience. Do you want to be a part of this? So it's just a great contact ministry. It's a way of helping churches work with a lot of young people fairly rapidly. And because it's a choir, you're working towards a common goal, which could be the concert or something like that. It creates a special kind of unity.
Mm-hmm.
So
here's my question. Our youth group at our church, we don't have Fusion, but our youth group, I think, would look a lot like a Fusion group. I've been to a Fusion group
Hmm.
before. And because of I think it's like 20 out of 21 kids, if you understand,
Hmm.
would be unbelievers.
Great.
So it's like doing a Bible study over Zoom wouldn't work for that context.
Hmm. Yep.
So can you give me a couple of life hacks that I can pass on to our Ukrainian youth leader? Kind of selfishly asking for him, what have you guys seen that works right now aside from phone calls? Is there anything else that we could pass on to him?
Are you thinking about using Zoom as a medium to do something with lots of young people, or just a couple of young people?
Just a couple is fine as well. One of the things we're trying to use Instagram
Hmm.
to reach out to them, with like challenge videos and stuff like that.
Yep. Yep. So, for example, in Slovakia, our organization there, they set up a Facebook group called Six Challenges. And every week they put up 6 new challenges. And they've basically been telling people, like, we're going to give you 6 challenges a week to fulfill. And as you do these challenges, take a picture of yourself, put it onto the Facebook page. And what they try and do is make sure one of the challenges involves reading the word. So it could be memorizing a book of the Bible or something like that. One of the challenges oftentimes involves food. Like this week, learn how to make a dessert. One of the challenges involves exercise. Go out for a walk in nature. One of the challenges involves, because this is mostly for Christians, it involves evangelism somehow, for example. So there's 6 different challenges that they put on there every week. And then right now, the group has over 600 people that are using it.
Wow, dude, that's awesome.
One of the things that they've learned about that is that it's much more impactful if when you do the challenge, you then hashtag somebody else.
Yeah.
So that's something that's really, really important, especially with right now, is creating that contact, those links of contact. So not a young person just doing something on their own and putting it onto a Facebook page, or if it's young people, Instagram, sorry. So when I say it's a Facebook page, then you're automatically hearing that it's going to be people in their 20s that are mostly using that. So with Insta or something else, if you create the hashtag or the link, you're challenging somebody else. That will massively impact the take up, whether or not a young person will do it or not.
Mm-hmm.
So don't just make it an activity that they do, create a social context or a social contact with them as well.
That's excellent.
That's one thing that people have been doing. Obviously over Zoom, there's lots of games you can play. Most normal games are translatable over to Zoom. So things like Pictionary, charades. I don't know if you know what Codenames is as a game.
I think I might have heard of it, but I haven't played
So
it.
I received a photograph a couple of weeks ago of my church. We in the Czech Republic, we send a missions team to a church in Ukraine every summer to help them do a camp, and so we have lots of Czech-Ukrainian friendships. And I was sent a photograph of some Czechs playing Codenames with some Ukrainians over Zoom, which for me was that's one of the blessings of what's happening in the Corona time. Like, there's a lot of terrible things happening, and obviously people are dying, a lot of anxiety, people losing jobs, a lot of depression. But we also have to recognize that God is doing some amazing things as well at this time because of this time. And seeing Czechs and Ukrainians playing a game together and praying together over Zoom is not something that they would have done otherwise.
Praise the Lord. That's awesome.
So that was another thing that was quite good.
Yeah.
Another thing that we've developed as an organization, we have this thing called the Seek app. And so we developed this even before the Corona times. Interesting, in God's timing, we finalized this a month before the coronavirus hit us. Thank you, Jesus, for that one. and so we've basically created, this one's in Czech, it's in Ukrainian as well, actually. So we've created a lot of themes which are interesting for young people. We've thought of a lot of themes. So love, forgiveness, family, sex, fear, pain, success. And if you go to one of these themes, what you'll find is a card with a Bible verse that speaks about that theme, and then just some questions that you can use when looking at that theme, when thinking about it. This is basically something like the Discovery Bible Studies. It's the questions are always the same. The introduction is always the same. The questions that you ask when looking at the Bible passage are all the same. And then how do you wrap up the meeting? It's always the same. And then we also have some more Bible verses at the bottom. If you want to explore this theme even more, there's some Bible verses there. So this is a tool that we're also equipping young people to use with their friends. If a young person does have a lot of fear, and let's face it, a lot of young people right now, they're trapped in their homes. Some of them feel like they're trapped. Those of you who are watching this in America, many of you probably have quite large homes with backyards. Most Central Eastern Europeans, they live in apartments, and they're small apartments. It might be that you're sharing a bedroom with your brother or sister. It might be that your parents' bedroom is the living room of the family in some of those families. So there's a lot of anxiety happening right now. So with something like fear or disappointment, this could be a possibility for a young person to say to their friends, you know, one of the reasons why I'm not experiencing this is because of something that I've read in the Bible. And can I just show this to you? Can I go through this with you? So this is just another tool that we've been developing. We've also put all of our disciple making PDFs materials into a touchscreen PDF format as well.
Very cool.
Just to enable people to use those. So there's lots of games that you can play on Zoom.
Yeah, we've even played a Risk, if you know Risk.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, we've even played Risk over Zoom, and if you just we have like you can like come on, my English is escaping me. Domовлятися. Come on. Like making deals over which territories you are going to take or not, or whatever. You know, you do that over Zoom, and then the actual game is on an Android app.
Oh,
you know?
Fantastic!
So
that's a great
works
idea.
Really well.
So, but I think that my biggest tip for anyone using Zoom meetings is use those breakout rooms. Like the big rooms are great for you know, getting lots of young people together, but it's the breakout rooms where you create community, just groups of 2, 3, 4 people. That's just really, really important. And I would say that with any, not just a youth group, and any meeting where you're wanting or hoping people to open up and share things, you need to make it a smaller space.
Yeah. I'm going to put the Seek app also in the description below, and a couple of tips about breakout rooms and all that kind of stuff. I want this video to be helpful to as many folks as it can be. So do you have a little bit more time to talk about how you became a missionary and your experience and that kind of thing, or do you have to go?
No, I have a couple more minutes. That's fine.
Oh, sweet. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about where you're from, and then how'd you get over to the Czech Republic, and maybe about your family a little bit and stuff like that.
Yep, so I'm English. You probably heard that from my accent. I am not American. A lot of people think I must be an American if I'm a missionary in the Czech Republic. But
why would they think that? England used to be America. I think America passed it several years ago, but England used to be the world leader in sending out missionaries. So that's not,
that is true.
It wasn't that long ago, you know.
Yep. Well, actually, another interesting point is this region of the Czech Republic, Moravia, used to be the world leader. The Moravian Brethren were one of the first big missionary movements. So it's interesting that now we say that the Czech Republic is an atheistic country, and people forget what a rich Christian heritage this part of the world had. So how did I get here? I was working in London in a job that I didn't enjoy much, and saving money to travel around the world. And my life plan was to spend a year traveling through Africa and Asia, and then be a guide for wealthy clients and to take them to countries in Africa or Asia. During my summers, I was working at a camp in the States where I was leading trips of young people into the mountains or 10-day canoe trips and things like that. So I really enjoyed taking people in nature and showing them new sites. And that was my career plan for my life, was to do that. But one day I had a phone call from a friend of mine from the camp who said that she had moved to the Czech Republic and was teaching English for a Christian school, and they needed more teachers. And as she was praying about who to call, she felt like the Spirit had led her to call me. And my response was, well, Debbie, that's nice that you think that, but I think you've probably made a mistake, because I have no interest in missions work. I have no interest in teaching. I don't even know where the Czech Republic is. And I've got my plan for my life. And it's a good plan. But I gave her the Christian no. And the Christian no is, but I'll pray about it.
Yes, the Christian no. That's wonderful.
Christian no. And her response was, well, can you pray about it right now? while we're speaking on the phone.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I was like, okay, yeah, that's fine. I'll pray on the phone. And as I started praying, I just was completely convicted by the Holy Spirit that it was his plan for my life to move to the Czech Republic. And so by the end of the phone call, I had committed to moving to the Czech Republic for 1
Wow.
year. She had said it was for 1 year. So I went to my office the next day and announced that I was moving to the Czech Republic. And I really thought it would just be for 1 year. And I made a very immature deal with God. Okay, God, I'll serve you for 1 year of my life, and then I can get on with doing what I want to do. So that was 22 years ago. And 22 years later, I am still in the Czech Republic in the city, Ostrava, where I first moved to 22 years ago.
Wow.
So, but my work is different now. Back then, I first came to teach English for a Christian school. In my free time, I started doing some youth ministry, and that youth work grew and grew. And after a while, we had about 200 young people attending our various projects in the city. And we were a parachurch ministry. I went to church, I was involved in my local church, but our youth ministry was very separate from the church. And what we realized was when our young people were coming to Christ, they were having a really hard time understanding why they should go to church or be a part of the church. Because our youth ministry was acting like a church for them. We had Bible studies, we had praise and worship nights, we had all these things. And for a while, we were happy for it to be that way. And we had a very good reputation in our city. We were reaching a lot of young people. And so we figured, this is great. We're doing what we should do. But then we realized, as we were keeping track of our young people that left our ministry to go to college in different cities, those young people that hadn't become involved in local church, no matter how involved they were with our ministry, they could have even been leading a Bible study. Had they not been more involved in the local church, when they went to college, their faith died.
Wow.
And we saw it too often to ignore. And we began to realize that the local church was a really key ingredient that was missing in our ministry. And so we decided two things. One, we decided a real win for us would be to teach local churches to do what we do.
Mm-hmm.
So because somehow we are attracting all these young people and somehow we share the gospel with them in a way that they are responding to. So what if we could teach churches to do that? And then the other thing we also decided is that we had to close ourselves down as a youth ministry because we were replacing the role of the church in our city, and that was dangerous. So it was a very hard thing to decide. On the outside, we looked like a wonderful ministry, but we didn't want to replace the local church.
Yeah, that's a very mature decision.
It was hard.
Yeah, oh goodness. Yeah.
So, and then actually, fortunately, 1 month later, while we were going through those processes, the president of Josiah Venture, Dave Patty, approached my wife and I and said, I've been watching what you do from a distance and it looks great, but wouldn't it be better if you taught churches to do what you do? And we were able to say to him, well, we've come to that conclusion. And so he invited us to join Josiah Venture, and that's to teach churches how to work with young people through specifically music and performing arts back then.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we ended up joining Josiah Venture. And that's why I would oftentimes say I'm like an accidental missionary. It was never my life intention to be a missionary. I didn't go to Bible school, wasn't trained to be a youth worker. Somehow I just learned to say yes to Jesus, and he took care of the rest.
Oh, that's wonderful. I like that a lot. Yeah, say yes to Jesus and he'll take care of the rest. That's beautiful. Alrighty, man. Okay, how can we pray for you as we wrap up here?
I think the prayer for us will be the same as for all families with children right now. My wife is a high school teacher. She has a full-time job. She's teaching during the day. I'm working during the day. We're trying to homeschool or crisis school our children at the same time.
That's a better, good way to put it. Yeah.
So just that we can be a healthy family, and we both have leadership roles in our church, so that we can be serving our church in the most impactful way as well. And obviously for the work of Josiah Venture, we are continuing to equip young leaders to fulfill the Great Commission through the local church. The coronavirus doesn't change that. It does change how we do it. And so we're still adapting to working out how can we best come alongside young youth workers and encourage them as they encourage their young people. And one way that we are doing that, I forgot to mention earlier, is that we have created a webpage that I'll give you the link to. which is just a simple web page of different resources and ideas, lots of Facebook games, basic ideas or tips on how to use Zoom, also some Bible studies and things like that address this time. So it's just a resource page for youth workers right now. And I'll give you the link to that, Dave, so that you can add it to the notes.
Excellent, excellent. There are pastors actually in around Ukraine that are asking for these things, and we don't have a large, I don't know, like
toolbox.
Yeah, put together for them. I'm going to seminary right now, and that was one of the questions that came up in our last student meeting over Zoom. I'm studying with all these pastors. Some of them are younger than me, but most of them are 45 plus, and so they're asking, how do we get kids excited about the word? And maybe that's why we're a little behind you guys in a way, with our kids here not being quite so tired of Zoom. It's because we haven't taken advantage of the tools that we have, because as a country, because not everybody here knows how to use those things yet. So
right.
Yeah. All righty. Well, I will put that in the description. Keep going.
And with that, my final thought would be, in any kind of ministry, I think Jesus is always the model. There's a constant pressure to think up something new. But if you look back to what Jesus did, he spent time with people, and he gave them meaning. He called them, or he even renamed them. He gave them life. And I think that's what we're called to do for young people: spend time with young people, creating relationship with them, and speaking life into them. That's never changed.
Amen. Amen. Can I pray for you now?
Yeah, thank you.
Sure thing. Lord, thank you so much for Terry and the English family. I pray that you guys, that you would bless them, and especially as they're crisis schooling. I like that. And still working their jobs and all cooped up in one place and everything. I pray that you would bless their family, Lord. Bless their church. I pray for your anointing to be there, that your special grace would be there, Lord. And then also with JV and all the amazing work that they do, and how they're helping us, trying to equip us, the rest of the churches here, Lord, with resources and with apps and with the Fusion and everything else. Lord, I pray that you would help them to continue to be innovative, and continue to be just excited about what you're doing, Lord. I pray that you would continue to encourage your church that there is a bright future, regardless of the darkness of the economy or the virus or the epidemic or whatever, because there's a bright future in you, Lord. Thank you for this conversation, and I pray that anyone that hears it would be encouraged. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, sir, for your time. Really appreciate it.
All right, thank you. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, God bless.
Bye-bye.